So today I'll be presenting on model risk in the age of AI. So today's agenda, I would be talking a little bit about model risk and how at Datatron we try to solve this problem using our tool, how we could actually reduce model risk uh, when the model goes into production. So today's agenda, I'm going to try to talk a little bit about challenges of why we need model risk, and then how Datatron actually tries to kind of solve some of those problems, and we are totally in production. And at the end, I'll try to give a quick demo of how it actually looks on our tool. So without further ado, I'm going to be sharing my screen and start with the presentation. Why is model risk, and what are some of the cases that have happened in the past? The nine capital groups lost because of a trading glitch when they tried to integrate the model into their entire system. There were some issues, and there was like a $440 million fine. Citigroup was fined 400 million groups because lack of uh, uh, governance on their models and even Apple Card was investigated for gender discrimination just because there were the husband and wife were actually getting different credits when they were applying for credit cards. So we want to actually make sure that all this stuff happen in production. So we have a lot of governance in today's world where a lot of people are actually in the development space, but at Datatron, we look at it a little differently, where we want to make sure that everything what's happening in production is what we expected when we were developing the models. So why is this the why? What is the problem, and how can we actually reduce some of those issues, right? So by standardizing the deployment process, a lot of these issues can be actually managed much better than if they were actually in an isolated or singular way of actually putting stuff into production. Uh, so what we have to detect like model decay if it happens, and a lot of times all these things are very unscalable and untraceable uh, when they are actually built individually for each model, and especially if it's kind of made specially in-house just because of a particular problem. So at Datatron, we believe that it's kind of common right now is that the models need to be compliant with current and future regulatory requirements. So you have a lot of guidelines already put out by the government. One standard guideline in the US uh, for a model risk is SR11. SR11 is mostly, if you think about it, mostly about model risk management in development. However, they give a lot of guidelines of how the model should act when it's actually deployed to. Uh, and an important issue to actually kind of look for is data drift. So data drift is when the data keeps changing in production, right? So detecting data drift early, even though data drift might be a slow process, would be an important feature to kind of trigger the retraining or getting new models into production. Obviously, finding biased models and detecting failures early would kind of reduce the problems that may occur with the regulatory people who or auditors who come and check your model's performance. So how do we kind of see Datatron? How does Datatron kind of see the model lifecycle? So Datatron thinks of model lifecycle. Obviously, it's much larger than this, but we divide it into two parts. One is the development phase, and one is the production phase. In the development phase, we can use any data scientists use a lot of different tools from Spark, TensorFlow, H2O, even SageMaker and Python. However, what we kind of are bringing to the table is that you can develop it in any of these frameworks, but if we could have a standardized platform to deploy your models, which would be easy to monitor and govern, that's where Datatron actually comes into play. So what would be your ROI taking this type of model risk management platform into production? We kind of the way we would actually work would be by having some type of model catalog to see all your models that are in production and monitor each model uh, as soon as the model is deployed or whenever the model is operationalized, right? And once the model is operationalized, you want continuous reporting. And if it is automated, the reporting is automated generally. Like for example, KPI metrics, how your hardware was acting up, or if there were any issues, that would be a direct input to the model risk team, which would again be required by regulators and auditors in uh, that are actually looking at what your platform is actually doing, or your model is actually doing. So now in a lot of companies, and this is probably before a lot of MLOps and MLOps tools came into the market. Uh, the each ML model was kind of done in a siloed environment where you had to rewrite scripts for performance. You needed to create APIs, containerize, fine-tune resources, and everything individually for each model, which a manpower to kind of do that. So with Datatron, we kind of standardize this process where the number of people or the number of resources needed when you use a platform uh, like Datatron would be much faster or much less. So as I said earlier, that one thing that we have to do is kind of monitor these models in production, and writing separate scripts to kind of calculate metrics might be uh, uh, a difficult thing to do when your model size increases. But what if we could actually standardize a lot of these uh, uh, a lot of these metrics, which are actually common to all, and have a centralized dashboard where data science teams and even the chief data officer could even come and actually look at what's happening at the ground level in production. So one thing that is required for most financial institutes is how do you keep your model? So one thing is building the model and making sure it works properly, but these are the other things that are kind of important, is like the security of the model. So can we protect the model against unauthorized access? And if there are some issues, can we go back and check what exactly happened in different stages of the model? Even encryption and things for the data and the model is super important in financial to reduce risk. The other point is that what if the entire model infrastructure breaks down? How could you recover and recover in terms of like least or manageable loss of data and loss of service? Could we actually recover from that? So these are some things that at Datatron we kind of look at when we are developing the platform. So how do we kind of do this? We have so if you can look at this figure, we see like we have different teams like AML team, global markets, fraud models. All these teams probably can use different tools to kind of deploy or develop their models. What we kind of do is standardize the way that all these teams can deploy their models onto Datatron, and now all the customers can actually get all the information they need or operationalize the model from this part or from Datatron directly. And what Datatron kind of adds to the table is all these parts like the governance dashboard, the model catalog, the security audit trail, the security that I spoke about, and all those cool things. So so we have been working with a lot of big uh, companies in finance too, and uh, we have proven that we have kind of had reduced time to market, compliance with regulators, regulations, improved transparency, productivity, and of course, because there's online monitoring and you get alerts in real time. It's a more peace of mind that hey, my models are behaving as expected. So this is a quote by we actually had we actually work with a large financial institute, and their model is actually pretty simple in terms of is pretty complex in terms of what they kind of need. They have uh, one of these models is called is to kind of classify funds in a daily fashion, right? And there are like 10,000 funds and 100 different providers, so collecting data from different sources and kind of scheduling jobs on our platform is one of the challenges that they kind of face. So but however, some of the challenges they kind of are actually looking at is like growing the number of ML models, and uh, because of that, that kind of increases a lot of risk in their model deployment and also monitoring, and hence uh, they need a platform to kind of monitor, validate, and govern all the models that are in production. So from here, I'm going to step into a quick demo to show some of the features to kind of show a lot of the stuff that I have actually already spoken about. So let me change screens to the demo. All right. So first thing that I want to kind of show is that in Datatron we have a a way to kind of have a role-based access control where the user can actually connect to their LDAP or their local directories where you have permissions, or we have some things like teams, and it could be customizable to basically a role or like per model basis, like what you want to do. But in this case, we have teams where the admin user can come in and choose a team, and they can actually allow people to kind of read or write or delete for a particular model, right? So the other thing that we can do is we actually are built on Docker and Kubernetes. And one of the things that we can actually do is connect to to external sources, and uh, and one thing that we connect to out here is Docker Hub. Docker Hub is where we actually pull the model. So if it's actually if the model can be Dockerized and can be made a service, we can pull that and kind of use any model that is actually there. That we have is the model catalog. So again, this Datatron is completely into the into the production phase of the model lifecycle. So whatever you see in this model catalog is only the models that are in production. So out here we can see a quick example of how the model catalog looks in our platform. So what we have is we can have models where each model can have different versions, and these versions can act independently of each other. So different downstream applications can be using different versions simultaneously in Datatron. Right. So what if we want to actually pull a model, say, which is in Docker Hub into the Datatron platform? The one way to kind of do it is actually go to a new model up here. You enter some information, and now that information we can actually we store as metadata, and this would be kind of logged into the security audit trail, which I've spoken earlier about, where every action taken on the model is actually logged and could be brought on to the regulators if needed. What we also have is versioning of the model. So out here, if we see that there are multiple versions, now whenever a request is made to Datatron, Datatron logs exactly which version and what time and everything about that request. So that's something that is also part of the security audit trail when the user needs that information. So to create a version is pretty simple. You just say create version, enter some metadata, and we can pull in the information. So one thing that is really cool is that we have this API integration. So your model can be wrapped around in any wrapper that could be kind of called, in terms of like, if you give us the port, the endpoint, and the web service command, any model can be actually run. For example, if it was built in any containerizing service. So we have got models built from Seldon that were deployed on Datatron too. So with the Seldon container, we could actually deploy those models, right? And after the model is deployed, the next thing that you want, after the model is registered in the model catalog, next thing that you kind of want to do is actually deploy the model. So to deploy the model, we have this thing called workspaces, where we have three different types of workspaces that you can see here. I'll go at a very high level of how models are deployed and what are the risk factors that we can actually mitigate by deploying these models in Datatron. So first is let's talk about like serving. So serving is a real time when you have real time requests or you need an API endpoint. That's when we kind of use serving as the workspace. So I can quickly create a quick serving workspace for you and show you how simple it is to kind of deploy the models. So test work, and we created. This would be like a wizard to kind of create a model. So basically what we would do, you want to search the model catalog first to kind of uh, take the model. So for example, let's say we have an XGBoost. I'm using XGBoost because there are multiple versions of it, so I can show you how we use the versions to kind of deploy. So here we can select, and we put a test deploy, and we create a deployment. We'll talk about the challenger later, but let's create the model. So here you can see it's offline, and to kind of deploy it, it's pretty fast. It's like, so firstly, if you see, there's a lot of metadata already captured, and obviously everything available in the same. We create deploy, select a version. So we had multiple versions. So at this point, we can select any version we want. And we have some advanced settings for auto scaling and stuff, but we'll just skip that for now due to time, and we hit submit. And basically what happens is that this is going to be deployed in a few minutes, but we can always monitor what's happening in this pod out here. In the logs out here. So let's kind of see some of the cool things that we can do to reduce risk. So first, one thing is that when we have this is a more sophisticated workspace where we are trying to change the model to a new version. So one of the risks while changing to a new version is that we don't know how this model is going to deploy. So suppose this publisher, this creditor one is the first model that is online, and we want a new model to kind of take its place. So some ways to kind of do that is to actually just switch it over, right? So you can say, okay, I want all the traffic which is going here to directly switch it over, and that's totally acceptable. However, there's a risk that the model might not behave as expected when you were developing it. So what we could do is actually use this model in shadow mode. A shadow mode is nothing but where all the requests come here. We kind of monitor the behavior of how the model is acting, and then once we're comfortable that hey, this is kind of behaving as expected, we can switch over the traffic to the next model. The second part is that what if we just want to A/B test a model? So we can actually tell this challenger, which is like our machine learning gateway, that hey, send 50% here, send 50% here, and obviously you can have more models. It doesn't matter as many models you want behind the challenger. The other thing is that we could set up rules that say that, hey, if a particular condition happens, we want to send it to this model, or we want to send it to this model, right? So that's another cool aspect about it. And what in the end, what kind of happens is that we can actually monitor these models of how they are actually behaving over time, and kind of make decisions on what you kind of want to do, right? One of the things to reduce risk is to kind of get notifications if some threshold is met. So we can actually set up these thresholds like an upper and lower bound if needed, to kind of say that, hey, if it goes below, a metric goes below or above a particular amount, just give me a notification, and we could and it could be integrated. We do have a notification center. As you see that there's deployment is successful, but a notification if the metric falls below above a particular amount will be sent to you either out here or in a particular stream like email or Slack, whatever you need. We do, and the same thing for drift and anomalies too. We kind of set it up. The other thing that we can do is also roll back to a particular version. So suppose some disastrous thing happens, the metrics go really bad, we can actually roll back to a particular version that we are comfortable, we know that is going to work, so to reduce your business time. So with Datatron, you can your business doesn't have to have a total shutdown, but you can just switch over models in real time with no downtime. And just the last part that I want to kind of speak about. So a lot of the stuff that you saw out here is directly available in scoring and scoring light is basically for batch processing, but it kind of works almost the same. And I could give you a quick overview of how it looks, but this is like a workspace that I created, right? And you get the data from some data source, you score the data instead of hitting the API endpoint that in the real time, we kind of score the data in batch and calculate these metrics that we were doing out there, which includes like your bias, drift, performance, anomalies, and then and you can even post-process it, stored back into databases. You could have replays, reports, everything from this platform, right? The last thing that I want to kind of show is how do you get this overall view. So what we saw out here is at the model level, what's happening at the model level. So what we have is this governance dashboard, which gives you a total overall view of what's happening in your platform. So for example, you see that, hey, if you come in the morning and say, hey, what's happening with all my models that I have permission to? Obviously, it depends on what type of permissions you have, what models you have access to, right? You can see, okay, here I have like in this credit approval models, I have some issues up here. What's going on? Like, can we go deeper? Okay, so you can see that, hey, there's some performance. It's not behaving that well. Let's go inside, and we can see that that what's happening within the model. Like, okay, there was some bias issues. Can we see? Okay, there's some gender issues. Okay, there was some problem out here. Okay, and this is kind of gives you an indicator of what's happening in real time, and you could actually go in and kind of dig deeper once you get an alert that, hey, something is happening. So the cool part is that you're getting all these things when your model is deployed on Datatron, and all this comes free with it. So the last thing that we will the model look. So let me actually show you. So this was the endpoint out here, but so this is kind of how the request looks. when you go into the details. So you see that, hey, that there's a primary output, and this is just shadowing it, and it's giving you some outputs, right? So that's what we are comparing. We get the ground truth through this feedback endpoint if the ground truth is available to calculate many of those metrics. And one thing that you can see is that the model that we actually looked at, we can smoke test it, right? And we can create the endpoint. We can test the endpoint. Yeah, it's working. You can see what's happened. That, hey, the publisher has received this data. It gave successfully gave the production data. Cool. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. And let's see if we have some questions up there. Okay. I do not see any questions till now. So if you'll have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. We do have 4 minutes, so I can wait until we get some questions. So right now we are working actively in production with 3 customers, and we are in POC with a few. So the question is, how many customers are using the service as of now? So the question is how to access the data for model monitoring. So one way to access the data is obviously through the Datatron platform, where we actually calculate. So, okay, the question could be twofold. One is that how does the user at the end access the data? So I think that Datatron can actually push all the data to any external data sources. If it's just to view the data, we can actually store it, or we could see a lot of these graphs and stuff on our platform. However, all this data is also available, like if it is configured to send to, say, S3 or something, we could actually push all this data to S3. And this includes either the raw data, which is actually the request and the response, and even the feedback, right? And probably even the metadata that if that's needed, like how long that each request took to kind of get a response. And that all could be actually pushed, all the production data could be pushed on in like a batch mode into some external data sources. So it could be S3 or some database. It's up to you how you'd want to do that. Thank Jane. So Felix asks, what does a model catalog actually look like on the back end? Is it essentially a set of stored weights and coefficients in the S3 bucket? So a model catalog for us is not stored weights, but it is kind of it's just a registry of where the model is stored, and the container information of how to kind of interact with that container. However, one thing is that, as I said, it's just a registry. It's not actually storing the model as such. It's just giving us the location. So we could actually connect to models that are not deployed on Datatron and who just want this monitoring aspect. Say they're deployed on, say, SageMaker, or they're deployed wherever it is on Azure. It could be multi-cloud too. It could be on one on Azure, one on thing, which tells us, okay, the model is deployed there. And if you give us, and that's pretty much all the information that that is actually stored in the model catalog, to make sure that we can have that connection to that model. So it's not kind of storing any weights or coefficients of the model as such on Datatron platform. Thanks, Alex. Awesome. All right, thank you guys. I hope this was information, and look forward to talking to any of you. You could contact me at Datatron, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care. Thank you.